The vastness of space had always been a place of endless possibilities, but for humanity, it had also been a place of overwhelming fear. For years, humans had been watched from afar by the powerful alien empires who ruled the galaxy. Earth was considered insignificant, a small, fragile planet in the far corner of the universe. But all that changed when a war broke out across the stars. The aliens had underestimated humanity. They didn't know the depth of human resourcefulness or the untapped potential hidden within Earth's people. For centuries, Earth had been isolated, unknowing of the galactic war that was unfolding in the cosmos. But when the first alien fleets appeared in Earth's orbit, it was clear that the time for isolation was over. At first, humanity tried to negotiate. The first contact was peaceful, a handshake between Earth's leaders and the alien representatives. But the aliens had no interest in peace. They saw humans as weak, primitive creatures, barely worth their attention. In the span of just a few weeks, what began as diplomatic talks turned into full-scale conflict. Commander Ray stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the swirling chaos unfold on the screens before him. The alien forces, technologically advanced and vastly superior in numbers, had already launched a devastating attack on Earth's outer defenses. But Ray's face remained calm, his mind focused. He was ready for the impossible. With the alien fleet bearing down on Earth, humanity's chances of survival seemed slim. Their weapons, while strong, were no match for the powerful starships and advanced technology the aliens possessed. But Ray had one thing the aliens didn't: unpredictability. Humans weren't bound by the same rules and strategies that guided the alien armies. They fought with heart, with spirit, and with a fierce will to survive. The first battle took place just outside the Earth's atmosphere, a brutal clash between the alien armada and humanity's hastily assembled fleet. Ray's flagship, the Defender, led the charge. Their weapons, though primitive by alien standards, were deadly in the hands of those who knew how to use them. The battle began with a deafening roar as Ray's fleet fired everything they had at the advancing alien ships. Laser beams cut through the darkness of space, hitting the enemy shields but doing little more than annoying the alien forces. The aliens responded with firepower that could destroy entire cities in seconds. But humanity wasn't backing down. All hands, brace for impact. Ray's voice rang out across the comms as enemy fire slammed into the Defender. The ship rocked violently, but the crew held their ground, working together like a well-oiled machine. Ray's plan was simple: strike fast, strike hard, and don't give the aliens time to regroup. He had studied alien tactics, learned their movements and strategies, and found one glaring weakness. The alien ships, despite their power, lacked the ability to adjust quickly to human unpredictability. Where the aliens fought with precision and order, humans fought with chaos and creativity. Ray's fleet had been given one advantage: cloaking technology. Though it was still in its experimental phase, Ray knew that it could make the difference between life and death. As the battle raged on, his fleet activated the cloaks, vanishing from the alien scanners. The aliens, unaccustomed to such tactics, were caught off guard. The humans attacked from all angles. They came at the aliens like a swarm, not giving them a chance to focus on any single target. The alien ships, despite their advanced weaponry and shields, couldn't adjust fast enough to counter the erratic patterns of human fire. Ray's ships darted in and out of range, landing blows on the alien vessels, each strike weakening them just a little bit more. The battle turned into an unexpected bloodbath. One by one, the alien ships began to fall. The commanders of the alien fleets had never faced such resistance before. They were accustomed to fighting races that followed predictable, calculated tactics. They had never encountered humans who fought not just with their weapons, but with their hearts. Ray knew that the aliens would eventually regroup, and they would come at Earth with everything they had. But in that moment, humanity had succeeded. Against all odds, they had driven the alien forces back. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The impossible had happened. Humanity had won the first battle. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The aliens, once so sure of their superiority, were now reeling from a blow they hadn't seen coming. How could this tiny, insignificant species, with only a fraction of the technology and resources of the alien empires, have pulled off such a victory? The answer was simple. They hadn't fought like the aliens. They had fought like humans. But Ray knew this was only the beginning. The aliens were not going to let this humiliation go unanswered. They would regroup, they would rebuild, and they would return with a vengeance. And that's when the true test would begin. The alien fleets retreated from Earth's orbit, their once proud ships now damaged and scattered across the stars. News of humanity's victory spread like wildfire through the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, a tiny, underdeveloped species had managed to stand toe-to-toe with the greatest military forces in the universe, and win. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer insignificant. On the surface of Earth, the people celebrated. Cities were alive with joy, their lights shining brighter than ever. Commander Ray, who had led the charge, stood on the steps of a makeshift command center, surrounded by his team. They had won the battle, but Ray's eyes were filled with a quiet unease. He knew that the alien empires would not allow this humiliation to go unpunished. This victory had only made things worse for humanity. Far away, in the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened in secret. The Council was a coalition of the most powerful alien species, each with their own interests and agendas. For centuries, they had ruled over countless civilizations, enforcing peace and maintaining order. At least, that's what they told the rest of the galaxy. In truth, the Galactic Council was a shadowy, ruthless organization, more focused on maintaining their own dominance than any real sense of justice. When the news of humanity's unexpected victory reached them, it sent shockwaves through the council chambers. The leaders of the various alien species, creatures of unimaginable intelligence and power, sat in a circle, their faces hidden behind holographic masks. They had not anticipated such a challenge, and worse, they had underestimated humans in ways that now seemed unforgivable. Have we lost our grip on the galaxy? One of the leaders, a towering insectoid creature named HFY, asked in a voice that resonated through the chamber. His many eyes scanned the faces of the other council members. This insignificant species has the audacity to defeat our fleets. How can we allow this to continue? The room fell silent, each leader pondering the implications of this unexpected turn of events. The council had maintained control of the galaxy for millennia, crushing any species that dared to defy them. But humans, with their sheer determination and unyielding will to survive, had proven to be a threat unlike any other. "We cannot allow this to go unpunished," said Zoreth, a cold-blooded, reptilian being with scales as dark as night. "This is not just about defeating us in battle. It's about humiliating the entire galaxy. Humanity's victory cannot stand. They must be eradicated." Others nodded in agreement, the atmosphere in the room growing tense. The council's decision was clear. Humanity had to be stopped, and they needed to act fast. However, not all of the council members were so eager to destroy Earth. A third voice spoke up, Kilara, a delicate yet sharp-minded alien who had spent years observing humans. Her species was known for their incredible intelligence and peaceful nature, and they had always been on the fringes of galactic politics. She was one of the few who had been impressed by the humans' actions, though she kept her thoughts to herself. "I agree that humanity poses a threat," Kilara said, her voice calm but firm. "But I urge caution. They are unpredictable, yes, but they are also resourceful. If we eliminate them now, we risk losing something valuable. There is a power in their ingenuity, something we cannot afford to ignore." The council members turned their eyes toward Kilara. She had always been an outlier in their group, known for her willingness to question the status quo. But even she could see the reality of the situation. The humans were no longer a simple annoyance. They were becoming a force to be reckoned with. "Your words have merit, Kilara," HFY said, his voice cold and calculating. "But you underestimate the danger. These humans will not stay in their corner of the galaxy. They will rise up, and they will destroy everything we've worked for. We must act swiftly." The debate raged on for what felt like hours, but in the end, the Council made their decision. Humanity could not be allowed to continue as they were. The Council voted unanimously to issue a final decree. Humanity would never again be allowed to participate in the galactic war. The news was sent out across the galaxy to all corners of space. The message was clear. Humanity's victory had been an anomaly, and now they were to be punished. They would be forced into exile, removed from the galactic war, and banned from ever taking part in future conflicts. Back on Earth, the news of the Council's decision hit like a thunderclap. The celebrations quickly turned to confusion and fear as Earth's leaders scrambled to understand what this meant for them. How could humanity be forced out of the galactic war? Why were they being treated like criminals for winning a battle they had no business winning? Commander Ray stood before his team once more, his heart heavy. He had known the Council would retaliate, but the magnitude of their decision was staggering. He had expected to face alien forces in battle again, but never like this. To be exiled from the very conflict they had just won felt like an insult beyond measure. "This is only the beginning," Ray said to his team, his voice filled with resolve. "The Council thinks they can silence us, but they've made a mistake. We'll find a way to fight back. We will prove that humanity is not something to be underestimated." As Ray spoke, a small group of alien ships appeared on the horizon, hovering above Earth's atmosphere. They were silent for now, but Ray knew this was just the beginning of a larger plan. The galactic powers would come for Earth, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. The Council's decision to ban humanity from the war had set the stage for a new kind of conflict. A conflict where humans would have to fight not just for their survival, but for their very right to exist in the galaxy. And Ray knew one thing for sure: humanity's fight was far from over. The galaxy was a cold, unforgiving place. Earth, once seen as nothing more than a speck on the map of the universe, had become a symbol of defiance. Humanity had proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with, not just by defeating alien fleets, but by surviving a war they never asked for. And yet, even as Earth prepared for what seemed like an inevitable retaliation from the Galactic Council, there was something darker lurking in the shadows. On Earth, there were those who saw the Council's decision as a sign of impending doom, and those who saw it as a challenge. But there was one man who saw it differently, a man whose ambition would soon make him humanity's greatest enemy. His name was Colonel Marcus Steele, a former military leader who had once stood beside Commander Ray in their fight against the alien fleets. Marcus was respected, a hero in his own right, and he had played a key role in humanity's victory. But he was also disillusioned, and that disillusionment would lead him down a path that would change the course of history. While Ray was preparing to face the consequences of the Council's decision, Marcus was making plans of his own. He had always believed that humanity's future lay in their ability to dominate, to not just survive, but to rule the galaxy. Marcus was tired of waiting for someone else to take control. He had seen the weaknesses in Ray's leadership, the hesitation to strike first, and he had grown frustrated with what he saw as humanity's unwillingness to push further into the stars. He believed that humanity's potential had been wasted under Ray's leadership. The Council's decree was the final straw. In the dark corridors of Earth's underground military bases, Marcus began to gather a group of like-minded individuals, officers, soldiers, and scientists who shared his vision. They believed that the only way humanity would ever survive in the galaxy was by taking what they wanted, by becoming the very thing the Galactic Council feared: an empire of their own. Marcus knew that the Council's forces were vast and powerful, but he also knew their greatest weakness: disunity. If humanity could stand united, they could crush any alien empire that dared to challenge them. But there was a problem. Marcus knew that Ray would never go along with his vision. Ray believed in defending Earth, in protecting its people and securing their place in the galaxy. But Marcus didn't want to be a defender. He wanted to be a conqueror. The fleet under Ray's command was severely outnumbered, but they had one thing the traitors didn't: unity. Even as the battle raged on, the people of Earth rallied behind their leader. Soldiers, civilians, and even the young had joined the fight, determined to protect what was theirs. The resolve in their hearts burned brighter than ever, even as the enemy closed in. On the ground, it was no different. Earth's defenders had turned the planet's cities into fortresses. The streets, once bustling with life, now echoed with the sound of boots on concrete and the roar of heavy artillery. Civilians had been trained to fight, with many of them working alongside the military to hold back the waves of Marcus's forces that descended on them. Ray knew this would be their last stand. If they failed here, if Marcus's forces broke through, Earth would fall, and humanity would be nothing more than a forgotten memory in the history of the galaxy. In the command center, Ray stared at the holographic map of Earth and Marcus's advancing forces. The battle was turning in their favor, but just barely. The tide could change in an instant, and if Marcus's forces breached the defenses, the fight would be over. Ray had a plan, but it would require everything he had left. "Captain Lewis, prepare the ships for a counterattack," Ray ordered, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. "We need to hit their main fleet now." "Yes, sir," replied Captain Lewis, his face determined as he gave the orders to the rest of the crew. The sound of soldiers preparing for battle filled the room as Ray's fleet prepared to engage Marcus. Meanwhile, Marcus's forces were closing in, and the time for a final confrontation was near. Marcus himself stood on the bridge of his flagship, a towering warship built for destruction. His eyes were cold as he watched the progress of his fleet, his mind focused on victory. He had waited for this moment for so long, and now it was finally within his grasp. As the battle raged on, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. The power he had amassed was immense. His fleet was the strongest humanity had ever seen. They had advanced weaponry, enhanced soldiers, and a ruthless will to conquer. And yet, deep down, he knew that something was missing, something he hadn't anticipated. Despite all his strength, the will of Earth's people had proven to be a force even he couldn't predict. On the battlefield, Ray's ships moved with precision, their weapons slicing through Marcus's fleet like a blade through paper. The air crackled with energy as weapons fired, and explosions lit up the sky. Ray's tactics were unconventional, but they worked. He had studied Marcus's movements, anticipated every move, and now it was time to strike back. "Target their flagship," Ray commanded as his fleet's guns opened fire, tearing through Marcus's ships one by one. It was a desperate move, but it was their only shot at taking Marcus down. If they could destroy his flagship, they could break the morale of his fleet and turn the tide of the battle. Ray's pulse raced as his ship tore through the heart of the enemy formation, weaving through debris and fire. He could see Marcus's flagship up ahead, a dark silhouette against the burning sky. It was massive, its weapons locked onto Earth's forces. It would take everything Ray had to destroy it. But Marcus had anticipated this. His fleet wasn't just made up of ships, it was a trap. As Ray's forces moved closer to the flagship, a secondary fleet emerged from the shadows, cutting off their escape routes. It was a brilliant move, and for a moment, Ray's heart sank. He had walked right into Marcus's trap. "This is it," Ray thought, his eyes narrowing as the enemy closed in. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and the enemy was relentless. But Ray wasn't the kind of man to give up. He had fought for humanity's future, and he wasn't about to let it slip away now. "Deploy the gravity bombs," Ray ordered, his voice barely a whisper. The gravity bombs were experimental weapons designed to destabilize enemy ships and create a gravitational pull so strong that even the largest warships couldn't escape. The weapons were a gamble, but Ray had no choice. As the bombs were deployed, they hit their targets with devastating force, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Ships were ripped apart, torn from their courses, and Marcus's flagship was no exception. The massive vessel trembled as the gravitational forces tugged at it from all directions. It wasn't enough to destroy the flagship, but it was enough to slow it down, enough to give Ray's fleet the opening they needed. With a renewed sense of determination, Ray ordered his fleet to close in. This was the moment of truth. It was now or never. The fleet under Ray's command was severely outnumbered, but they had one thing the traitors didn't: unity. Even as the battle raged on, the people of Earth rallied behind their leader. Soldiers, civilians, and even the young had joined the fight, determined to protect what was theirs. The resolve in their hearts burned brighter than ever, even as the enemy closed in. On the ground, it was no different. Earth's defenders had turned the planet's cities into fortresses. The streets, once bustling with life, now echoed with the sound of boots on concrete and the roar of heavy artillery. Civilians had been trained to fight, with many of them working alongside the military to hold back the waves of Marcus's forces that descended on them. Ray knew this would be their last stand. If they failed here, if Marcus's forces broke through, Earth would fall, and humanity would be nothing more than a forgotten memory in the history of the galaxy. In the command center, Ray stared at the holographic map of Earth and Marcus's advancing forces. The battle was turning in their favor, but just barely. The tide could change in an instant, and if Marcus's forces breached the defenses, the fight would be over. Ray had a plan, but it would require everything he had left. "Captain Lewis, prepare the ships for a counterattack," Ray ordered, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts raging in his mind. "We need to hit their main fleet now." "Yes, sir," replied Captain Lewis, his face determined as he gave the orders to the rest of the crew. The sound of soldiers preparing for battle filled the room as Ray's fleet prepared to engage Marcus. Meanwhile, Marcus's forces were closing in, and the time for a final confrontation was near. Marcus himself stood on the bridge of his flagship, a towering warship built for destruction. His eyes were cold as he watched the progress of his fleet, his mind focused on victory. He had waited for this moment for so long, and now it was finally within his grasp. As the battle raged on, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of superiority. The power he had amassed was immense. His fleet was the strongest humanity had ever seen. They had advanced weaponry, enhanced soldiers, and a ruthless will to conquer. And yet, deep down, he knew that something was missing, something he hadn't anticipated. Despite all his strength, the will of Earth's people had proven to be a force even he couldn't predict. On the battlefield, Ray's ships moved with precision, their weapons slicing through Marcus's fleet like a blade through paper. The air crackled with energy as weapons fired, and explosions lit up the sky. Ray's tactics were unconventional, but they worked. He had studied Marcus's movements, anticipated every move, and now it was time to strike back. "Target their flagship," Ray commanded as his fleet's guns opened fire, tearing through Marcus's ships one by one. It was a desperate move, but it was their only shot at taking Marcus down. If they could destroy his flagship, they could break the morale of his fleet and turn the tide of the battle. Ray's pulse raced as his ship tore through the heart of the enemy formation, weaving through debris and fire. He could see Marcus's flagship up ahead, a dark silhouette against the burning sky. It was massive, its weapons locked onto Earth's forces. It would take everything Ray had to destroy it. But Marcus had anticipated this. His fleet wasn't just made up of ships. It was a trap. As Ray's forces moved closer to the flagship, a secondary fleet emerged from the shadows, cutting off their escape routes. It was a brilliant move, and for a moment, Ray's heart sank. He had walked right into Marcus's trap. This is it, Ray thought, his eyes narrowing as the enemy closed in. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and the enemy was relentless. But Ray wasn't the kind of man to give up. He had fought for humanity's future, and he wasn't about to let it slip away now. "Deploy the gravity bombs," Ray ordered, his voice barely a whisper. The gravity bombs were experimental weapons designed to destabilize enemy ships and create a gravitational pull so strong that even the largest warships couldn't escape. The weapons were a gamble, But Ray had no choice. As the bombs were deployed, they hit their targets with devastating force, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Ships were ripped apart, torn from their courses, and Marcus's flagship was no exception. The massive vessel trembled as the gravitational forces tugged at it from all directions. It wasn't enough to destroy the flagship, but it was enough to slow it down, enough to give Ray's fleet the opening they needed. With a renewed sense of determination, Ray ordered his fleet to close in. This was the moment of truth. It was now or never. The final assault had begun. The battlefield was silent. The once violent clash of weapons and cries of soldiers had faded away, leaving an eerie calm hanging in the air. Earth's skies, which had been filled with the flashes of battle, now appeared empty, as if the universe itself had paused to catch its breath. The final assault was over. Marcus's fleet had been defeated, his flagship torn apart by the sheer force of Earth's retaliation. But despite the victory, something felt wrong. Commander Ray stood at the edge of the command deck, his eyes focused on the distant horizon, where the last of the enemy ships burned out of existence. The battle was won, yet victory tasted bitter in his mouth. The cost had been too high. Too many lives lost. The city that had once stood proud now lay in ruins. The people of Earth had fought with everything they had, but in the end, it was the pain of those losses that lingered the longest. Ray's heart ached for those who wouldn't see another sunrise, for the soldiers and civilians who had given everything to protect their home. Marcus had been captured during the final moments of the battle. He was brought to Earth, shackled and powerless, his pride shattered. The once great leader of the alien forces now stood humiliated before Ray and his council, the weight of his defeat settling heavily on his shoulders. His golden armor, once a symbol of power, now looked dull and lifeless. "You've lost," Ray said coldly, his voice carrying the weight of years of struggle. "This is where it ends for you." Marcus glared up at him, his eyes burning with hatred, but there was something else in them now. Fear. The fear of knowing that his reign had come to an end. Earth had fought back. The people of Earth had shown him that even against overwhelming odds, they would not back down. And that terrified him more than anything. "You think this is over?" Marcus sneered. "You think you've won. The galaxy is vast, and you are but a speck in it. This war will continue. Someone will come for you." Ray stepped forward, his face hard as stone. "Not if I can help it." The council gathered around, their faces grim. They had all seen what Marcus was capable of, but they also knew what had to be done. There could be no forgiveness for a man who had caused so much destruction. The people of Earth had demanded justice, and the council had a responsibility to uphold it. Marcus had once believed that his empire would stretch across the stars, that no one could stand against him. But now, standing before Ray, stripped of his power, he knew the truth. His empire had crumbled, and he was no longer the king of anything. Commander Ray, one of the council members, spoke, their voice tense. "What do we do with him?" Ray didn't hesitate. He had made his decision long ago. He is to be banished. The words hung in the air, and Marcus's expression shifted. His pride had been shattered, but banishment, that was a punishment worse than death in his eyes. He had known nothing but power and control, and to be cast away, exiled from everything he had ever known, was a fate worse than any prison. Banishment. Marcus spat, his voice thick with disbelief. "You cannot be serious. Do you think I will let you do this? Do you think I will accept this humiliation?" Ray's eyes hardened. "You have no choice. You are nothing now. You will be cast out, left to wander in the void of space. No armies, no allies, no empire. Just you alone." Marcus struggled against his restraints, but the guards held him firmly in place. He was powerless now. The great alien warlord who had once commanded entire fleets, who had thought himself invincible, was nothing more than a prisoner now. The council gave their approval, and the decision was final. Marcus was to be exiled to a barren planet at the edge of the galaxy, a place so remote and inhospitable that it was as good as a death sentence. No resources, no way to survive unless he learned to adapt and survive on his own. It was a fate that would strip him of everything he had ever known. The planet was a harsh, unforgiving place, and even the strongest would struggle there. It was the ultimate punishment for someone like Marcus. As the guards began to escort him to the transport ship that would take him to his new prison, Marcus's voice shook with rage. "You'll regret this, Ray. You'll see. You've made a powerful enemy today." Ray didn't flinch. He had no fear of the threats Marcus made. The truth was, Earth was stronger than ever, and Marcus had no power left to challenge them. The galaxy would remember this day, the day that humanity had risen from the ashes of defeat and stood victorious. Ray watched as Marcus was led away, his footsteps heavy with the weight of his fall. For a moment, Ray couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity for the man. After all, Marcus had once been like him, fighting for a cause, believing in his own strength. But that was before he had lost everything. Now, Marcus was just another broken soul in a galaxy full of them. Ray turned away, the burden of command heavy on his shoulders. The war was over, but the scars it had left behind would take years to heal. Earth had won, but at what cost? The people had fought with all their might, but the price of victory had been steep. There was no turning back now, only the future. As Ray looked out at the horizon, a new day began to break across the sky. The war was over, but humanity's journey had just begun. There would be challenges ahead, but Earth had proven its strength. The galaxy would never forget the day when humanity stood against all odds and prevailed. And for Marcus, the once proud conqueror, the stars would no longer be his to command. He would drift, alone, in the void, never to return. The galaxy was still reeling from the aftermath of the war. Earth, once a vulnerable planet on the outskirts of known space, had now become the symbol of resistance. The hum of Earth's engines was no longer the sound of desperation, but the sound of triumph. Yet, despite the victory, there was a quiet, simmering tension beneath the surface, a feeling that the battle wasn't truly over. Ray stood on the balcony of the new command center, overlooking the reconstructed city. It was a strange sight. On one hand, Earth was stronger than ever, its defenses fortified, its people united like never before. On the other hand, there was an unease that gnawed at him, a feeling that not everyone shared the same vision for the future. The war had been brutal, and the scars left behind were not just physical. The people of Earth had grown accustomed to living in fear, to fighting for their survival. But now, with the galaxy at their feet, there were whispers in the corners of the rebuilt cities. Not everyone was content with the way things were being rebuilt. The scars of war ran deeper than anyone cared to admit. Ray's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice behind him. "Commander, there's something you need to see." He turned around to find Lieutenant Sarah, one of his most trusted officers. She had always been sharp, her intuition never wrong. She held a data pad in her hands, her expression tense. "What's going on?" Ray asked, his voice calm but laced with concern. Sarah stepped forward, her face grim. "It's a report from our intelligence networks. It seems there's movement. Small, but significant. The remnants of Marcus's forces are still out there, and they're not just hiding. They're organizing." Ray's stomach tightened. He had feared this moment, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down his spine. Marcus is gone. His empire is broken. Why would they still fight? Sarah shook her head. "It's not just about Marcus. There are factions out there, rogue groups that believe in his vision. They don't want to accept Earth's rise. Some of them are ex-soldiers. Some of them are civilians who were affected by the war. There's talk of rebellion." Rebellion. The word hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Ray had always known that peace was fragile, but this was something different. It wasn't just the remnants of a defeated empire. It was a new kind of resistance, one that wasn't just about the past. It was about the future, about what Earth had become. "Where are they?" Ray asked, his mind racing with possibilities. "We don't know the full extent of their numbers yet. Sarah replied. "But they're operating in the outer colonies, spreading propaganda. Some have already begun raiding supply ships and outposts. They're small, but they're organized, and they're getting more vocal. There's a growing movement, Commander. We might be facing a full-scale rebellion soon." Ray closed his eyes for a moment, processing the information. The war with Marcus's empire had drained the people of Earth. They had fought for their survival, and now that the battle was over, they had earned the right to rebuild. But the idea of a rebellion, it threatened everything they had worked for. The unity, the hope, it all felt fragile now. "I need to speak with the council," Ray said, his voice firm. The council meeting was tense. The leaders of Earth sat around the table, their faces lined with worry. The victory over Marcus's forces had been celebrated, but now the cracks were starting to show. There were factions among the people, and some felt that the new order was nothing more than a continuation of the old one. One of the council members, a man named General Davies, spoke first. "This is exactly what we feared. The galaxy is vast, and even with Marcus gone, his influence lingers. These rebels are just the beginning. If we don't act now, they could rally more support. The people are restless." Another council member, Dr. Eva Lorne, a strategist known for her sharp mind, leaned forward. "We can't simply crush them by force. The last war nearly destroyed us. If we start a new war, we risk losing everything. We need to understand their motivations. Why are they rebelling?" Ray's hands clenched into fists on the table. "We can't afford to let this rebellion grow. We need to strike first, before they have a chance to spread further." But Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "If we do that, we risk turning these rebels into martyrs. They'll only grow stronger. We need to get to the heart of their movement, figure out who's leading them, and why. If we make them feel like they're being oppressed, we'll only give them more reasons to fight." Ray looked at her, torn between the desire for swift action and the need for caution. She was right. They couldn't make the same mistake they had made during the war with Marcus. If they attacked too quickly, they could turn this into a full-scale war. If they didn't act at all, they risked watching the seeds of rebellion grow into something that could destroy everything they had worked for. "I agree," Ray said finally. "We need to find their leader, understand their goals. But we need to be ready to act, in case this turns into something bigger than we're prepared for." The council nodded in agreement, but Ray could feel the weight of the decision settling heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about maintaining peace in a galaxy that had known nothing but war. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and no matter how hard they tried to stop it, they couldn't erase the fact that there were those who would never accept Earth's rise. They had become a target, and now they would have to fight not just for their survival, but for their future. As the meeting broke up, Ray stood alone, staring out at the stars. He had faced down Marcus, an entire empire, and won. But this was something else entirely. He had fought for Earth's place in the galaxy, but now he would have to fight to protect what it had become, and the battle was far from over.